Did you look at Borderlands in which its looter-shooter mechanics were significantly lessened? Did you see Doom and want it to take place in a world that could be effectively described as a planet-sized trash heap factory? Then my friend, you are in the right place. Necromunda Hired Gun was published by Focus Home Interactive, who also published Necromunda Underhive Wars. This isn't their first foray into Warhammer 40,000. They also published Farming Simulator 19, that is not at all relevant to this, I just wanted you to know that. Hired Gun was developed by Streum On Studio, a small Parisian indie development team who worked on I, Divine Cybermancy and Space Hulk Deathwing. This game seems like it's right up their alley. Now before I go any further, I need to clarify two things. First, this review will have a large focus on the gameplay and mechanics found within Hired Gun, which I'll explain the reasoning for later on. Second, some or even all of the bugs and issues I mention might not even exist by the time you watch this. Now I won't lie, this game sometimes feels like a work in progress, though I'll grant it's much further down the line of complete than some other games I could name. I'm looking at you, 76. And thankfully there are relatively regular patches to fix ongoing issues within the game. Good? Good. The game starts off with the fairly standard "a job has gone wrong" opening, and leaves you with strange tech and a hate boner for the one who tried to off you. Thankfully, this hate boner also has a $250,000 payout. And so begins, or continues, I suppose, your bounty hunting life, and you're after one hell of a score. The game revolves around this chase of the Silver Talon, and every completed mission also opens up new bounties to take in pursuit of more money, which in turn garners more upgrades to make the campaign missions and bounties more bountiful, and so on. It's a fairly simple gameplay loop. Each action you take in Martyr's End impacts what you can do in the field. This does come with its own issues, though. The game has looting as a mechanic. Enemies sometimes drop various things when killed. These tend to be status items, but sometimes they can even drop armor or guns. You're more likely to find those last two in chests. However, there are some strange choices as it relates to that idea. The inventory management is, for example, subpar at best. You know how in most games with looting as a mechanic you can access your inventory at any time? You can't do that here. You can only add things to it, and even then it isn't strictly speaking in your inventory, it's just on a loot list you can pick and choose from at the end of a mission to decide if you actually want to keep it in your small inventory. You can't see the stats of a weapon if you want to swap it with what you currently have equipped in order to justify doing so. Also, unlike something like Borderlands, likely the most prolific looter-shooter game as of this recording, hence why I felt the need to mention it, the loot isn't nearly as varied as you'd expect it to be. Even the rarer status items don't really offer anything unique that you can't find with other status items, and the small selection of guns the game has on offer only really has marginal differences between rarity types. I mean, the differences may be marginal, but you can use a lot, right? Not exactly. Altogether, you have 5 weapon slots. One is dedicated towards the Iron Fist you start the game with, so you can't modify what's in it, though you can modify the gun itself. 2 are pistol exclusive, one of which I always fill with the Escher's Kiss, and the other 2 can be filled with anything. Why they couldn't make it so that each slot, other than the one which holds your original pistol, holds its own type of gun is beyond me. I mean, there's enough there to cover all of the gun types: pistol, basic, heavy, and special. There's also a 6th slot, but you can't interact with that one at all. It's meant for special guns you come across on pedestals inside of a level, which also aren't exactly what I would label as unique either. Looting weapons could even be considered pointless for another reason. The shop eventually contains +1 variants of every weapon in the game. That's how few weapons there are. So having looting as a mechanic seems a bit unjustified. To somewhat make up for this, there's a fair amount of customization on your weapons. You could even put a silencer on your gun if you want. I mean, I don't know why, but you could. The customization itself has some issues though. You can't change the weapon skin of a gun of +2 or higher rarity weapons. You also can't remove a mod from a gun and reattach it to another gun of the same model, unless it's an Archaeotech or a Lucky Charm. Now the first one's just confusing, but the second one is a small gripe because after a certain point money means literally nothing, so you're fully capable of buying whichever mods you would like at any time you want. The bounties you can pick up at the mission screens are obviously geared towards you earning cash for upgrades or grinding for loot. Either way seems odd reasoning though. Once you're able to do S-rank purge or defense missions, money becomes entirely a moot point, especially if you upgrade the vocal implant skill, and the damning inventory system and lack of loot variety makes using those bounties for looting a bit lackluster too. One could argue that there's a third purpose. Doing bounties also upgrades your affinity with certain factions, but I didn't see any actual impact on the game world, and the rewards from doing so aren't exactly unique either. I'm really harping on that unique thing, aren't I? Oh well. So the mechanics in the game that are meant to supplement the primary gameplay loop must water down the actual FPS experience, right? About that. The gunplay is fantastic, the firefights you find yourself in can be intense. Bullets fly through the air and hit their mark, causing enemies to literally explode in a grotesque show of viscera. Their organs dripping from the ceiling, blood coating the walls, it's fucking fantastic. It's a damn shame that there's some caveats there as well. Balancing is an issue. The auto pistol, Escher's Kiss, is extremely strong and can be gained fairly early in the game. This is also one of the only games I've ever played where I cannot reasonably recommend using a shotgun. Imagine that, an FPS game where using a shotgun isn't exactly a viable option. This game also has a healing mechanic similar to Bloodborne's, where if you shoot at an enemy who recently shot you, you gain back some health. On its own this would be fine, but the game also has glory kills, or takedowns as they're called here, which also garners a return of health to your character. Now there's the obvious visual jank at times, you also can't be hurt during these takedown animations. It also takes nothing to take down most enemies. And then there's the bugs. I've encountered multiple walls at different points just traversing the environment, as well as using a takedown on no one only for someone a few feet away to spontaneously die. The second one happens more often than you'd expect, but it's not the worst bug I've encountered. Turns out this boss was secretly a mole man. I don't even know what caused this, but I did have to restart the mission. Thankfully, not everything is like this. Everywhere you explore throughout the game is extremely varied, from a massive moving train, and I do mean fucking massive, to an underground lake full of mines. These places are so interesting that they are probably the most memorable parts of the game alongside the music. Fuck, is there some good music. The story is very hit or miss, though. I was kind of how many things were brought up that could have been expanded upon that just weren't. I don't know if they were just sequel or DLC baiting, but it was kind of annoying. Altogether, the story is just not this game's strongest attribute. I can only name 2 characters off the top of my head, Jericho and the Silver Talon. But I can't tell you why specifically the Silver Talon wants your head. I mean, it's because of what is literally in your head, but what that actually is entirely up in the air so far as I can tell. No, the story isn't the sell for this game, and so I'm not really going to elaborate on it. That's how forgettable it was. Hired Gun is a relatively short game too, with grinding to max out my dog's upgrade tree and most of my own tree. I beat it in under 20 hours, and most of the game's 13 chapters can be beaten in anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, so your time could probably be even less. Necromunda Hired Gun is a frenetic FPS game that has strange mechanics that don't benefit the primary gameplay loop as much as they could. The inventory system neuters the game's own leading mechanics, the soundtrack and the environments are stellar, but the story undersells what the game could be. Everything together makes for a framework of strange choices around a fairly fun, strong gameplay loop, murdering idiots in your way. Altogether, I can't recommend you get this game at its base $40 price tag, with another $8 for its soundtrack, which is something I do recommend. But if it's something that seems appealing to you, get it when it's on sale. I might sound like I hate this game, but the fact of the matter is, I enjoyed my time with it. So, take that for what it's worth. You've probably been wondering where I've been for the past few months, and the short answer is I've been home, technically. I mean, from a literal standpoint, it's a bit more complicated than that. But the past few months have been just fucking hectic, especially after, like, the beginning of August. I feel like my ass has been kicked over and over again by life. It's just so fun is what it is. Either way, I've got another trip planned for October, November, so my upload might be a bit more erratic, but I know what I'm going to try to review next. It's probably going to be something RPG based. I'm thinking probably either something Dragon Age or Pillars of Eternity. And either way, it's going to be a bit long of a wait for that, because those are a lot more long-form games than something like Hired Gun was. So yeah, look forward to that whenever it's out, and in the meantime, enjoy me actually doing some good in Devil May Cry. Thanks. Story out.